Hello, 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 and welcome to day one, the training day of Pleasure Driven Prosperity. I'm so excited to have you all here. If you haven't already watched the live or the replay of the opening, you're most welcome to go and do that. Look, it's not like prerequisite learning, but it will give you a little bit of context as to who I am, my experiences, what has brought me here, and my journey from, I want to say, from postnatal depression to pleasure-driven prosperity, because that just sounds really good, right? But yeah, it's been quite a journey over these last few years, and you'll get a bit of that information in there. You'll also get a bit of an idea about how this is going to play out the next few days. But in saying that, if you're here live, don't go anywhere. Stay here with me, and we will dive in from here. And first, I'm going to be acknowledging the original custodians of the land of which I sit, which is the Wadi Wadi people of Dharawal land. And I extend this acknowledgement out to the custodians of the land of which you are grounded upon as well. I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and honour their continuing connection to land, water, and culture. This land always was and still is Aboriginal land. I acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. So today, my loves, if you're here with me live, jump into the comment box. If you've got any questions, or if you just want to share, like if something's really landing for you, or if it's like an aha moment or any of those things. I also am going to be giving away today my book. So if you do not have a copy of it yet, this is going to be really great for you, especially with the pleasure component of pleasure-driven prosperity. So yes, it is about pleasure in motherhood, but all of the tools, practices, prompts, and activities and things like that within it, there's one in every chapter, is translatable to life in general. So jump on in. The more you engage, the more you'll be in a chance to win that one. And I did share in the opening call as well, it was Julia who won a one-on-one with me, which is for those of you who jumped in before the sign-up page was even created. There was like 20 of you. It was awesome. All right, so today I'm going to be diving in today on a beautiful collection of the things that have helped me to create pleasure-driven prosperity. So it was really, there's been so many, and I think this just goes to kind of show that it's really important to acknowledge that it's not just like one big thing. I know plenty of people will try and say to you like this one key thing. And yes, in the opening call, I shared that there was two main things that have really helped to create pleasure-driven prosperity. However, oh look, I've got one of my children's stickers in my arm. However, you know what? There has been so many little micro behavior changes and mindset shifts, and so many of those like micro actions and let's just call them that have stacked to create the macro, right? That have stacked to create these last kind of few months of just like my business kind of blowing up. It feels like we've got this second wind in our relationship, my husband and I. And by the way, I feel like this is probably a thing, once like the little ones are now like kind of gone, like my youngest now, she's almost 3, like we're sleeping again, and, I have this beautiful connection with all my kids. Like life is just like totally blossomed so much. And I don't want to pretend because, it would be really easy. It would be really easy to like sell this idea that like, oh, I did just this one thing, because then people were like, oh, that sounds easy. I want to do that one thing. Regan, teach me how to do that one thing. But it was so many of these little pieces together. And as I shared earlier, like I have my book, that's kind of a lot of the pleasure-driven side of it. And there's a whole book in there, right? Like there was so much that I have explored and dived into that I wrote a whole book on it. And so so today's going to be a sprinkling of a bunch of those things that have been really helpful. Tomorrow is going to be all about failing with pleasure. And again, chances are like you've probably been like, I'm sure I signed up for failing with pleasure. But I really harnessed these last few months acknowledging like, hang on a second, if I can make the failing side of what doesn't work out for me and like the goals that I don't hit and yada, yada. If I can make that enjoyable, like there's actually nothing that's going to stop me. Like my success is inevitable, right? I'm completely unstoppable. And so I think that's really important because yes, I can share all of the things that I've done. And this is what this free experience is about this week, like the what of that I have done. And then if you want to come ahead and work with me, I'm going to be sharing a couple of offers that I've got for you at the end of today. If you want to stick around for those to listen in, you are absolutely most welcome to. That's going to be where we really dive into the how. So I'm going to give you all of the what, and a lot of those pieces you can take home and DIY yourself, right? So today is going to be a lot about, this week's going to be about the what. Today is the sprinkling of like, what are some of those things I did? And then I'm also really aware that once we start to do some of those things and like incorporate some of those shifts into our lives, there are problems that naturally arise, you know? And so when we are taking the action, even if it is in a pleasure-led way, we can then notice that, oh, but this thing that I wanted to work didn't work. And now I feel terrible and I feel like I suck. And like, you know, now I'm demotivated and all of these things, right? So instead of just sharing like the bright side of things with you, tomorrow we're going to be looking at like, well, what do we do actually when things don't work out the way we want them to do? Like, how can we allow those problems to not be a problem and still create the prosperity that we desire? Okay. So as I said, if you've just jumped on here now, please do jump into the chat box, as some of you already have. The more you engage today, the more you have a chance of winning my book, A Mother's Pleasure, because I like giving things away. When you're filled with pleasure, you are generous, right? Now, are there any questions before we begin? I'll check the chat box. Otherwise, you're most welcome to raise your hand. Sasha, thank you for sharing that acknowledgement to country here and saying that my book is fabulous. Thank you, my love. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And oh my goodness, I started to share about this the other day, like the vulnerability of putting your work out into the world. And this is probably something we'll dive in tomorrow. Yeah, that was quite the journey. So I love when I get great feedback. It helped to know that the vulnerability was worth it. All right, let us begin. Making my screen a little bit bigger. Okay, so one of the things that has been really helpful in me actually creating the prosperity I desired, and as I've spoken to this already, for me, and I've shared in the Voxer group as well, I believe, prosperity for me is like all the pieces of my life, like flourishing and abundance and like actually acknowledging and owning and claiming what it is that I desire. So one of my past lives was being a yoga and meditation teacher, right? And so if you are in that kind of spiritual world, you might have come across this before as well, this idea that like you know, money shouldn't actually be a focus for you. You know, you should just want to do this out of service, right? And so yeah, whilst I absolutely love the work I do, and I think that's when you know you're onto something, that you would do it for free anyway. Hello, here we are. But once I, you know, this year started to realize that, you know what, I actually want to create money. I want to create wealth. I want to have to not worry about certain things in my life. You know, I want to be able to get a whole bag of, you know, fun little things for my son to take to school because they're making cardboard animals in the class. And like, there's a whole range of different things for the kids to use, you know. Like, I want to know that I can take myself for a massage to look after myself and be the best version of myself for my family and my clients, you know? And so, yeah, part of that in this experience that we're going to be learning about is, you know, knowing, owning, and claiming what it is that you desire. Okay. Sometimes it can be really tricky because you might even be stuck on the first part of like, oh, I don't actually really know what it is I desire. And I started to call bullshit on myself when I was like, oh, I don't really know. Because I was like, actually, there is a part of me that knows. It's just I'm telling myself that I don't know because it feels uncomfortable. You know, I'm telling myself, and this goes with pleasure as well, like, oh, you know, I don't need pleasure. It's a luxury, because there is so much shame, taboo, so much conditioning and socialization around what we should desire as women, as mothers, when it comes to money and pleasure. And so part of this year, it was about me really knowing and then owning what it is that I desired, you know, And there's so much work even in that. And when I say work, like, we don't have to make it hard, right? And this is one of my principles, pleasure-driven principles. It's like, it's still valuable if you haven't suffered. You can create what you desire without it being hard, you know? So for me, owning was a big part of it. And then claiming what it is that I desire, like actually taking the action to claim it. And even now for you, you might be thinking like, oh, claiming what I desire, that sounds like really like stake in the ground, like masculine. So maybe it's about embracing for you, like knowing, owning, and embracing what it is that you desire. And you might find along the way, and like hands up, if you know what you desire, you're ready to own it, but it's hard to claim it because, I don't know, maybe you've got more fear around being successful than you do around failing. Or maybe it feels really uncomfortable to show up and be seen. Maybe it feels really shameful to not be, in inverted commas, humble and to sell what it is that you have to offer, right? So a big piece of this year has been knowing, owning, and claiming what it is that I desire. And so one of the things that came up for me was like, okay, so part of what I know I want to achieve, have, create, claim or embrace is growth in my business, like making good money in my business. And I remember it would have been probably towards the end of last year. And I remember having like this uncomfortable conversation with my husband, Jake. And I had it in my head that he didn't support me, right? Because like the way my kind of schedule / lifestyle works is I'm the full-time caregiver to our 3 kids. Our eldest is in school. And then we've got our 2 youngest ones, they're 2 and 5. And so, yeah, I'm there with them most of the time. When hubby works, he's at work, I'm with the kids. And if he has some spaciousness, that's when I do my work, right? I have tried, there's a couple of things that I can do in terms of working around my kids. Like I can edit my podcast and things like that, because that's very kind of stop start. But like trying to write or get into like this, creative energy where you really want to be in a flow, I noticed that it actually wasn't very helpful or conducive to the prosperity I wanted to create in connection with my kids and my family, because I would get annoyed because they were interrupting me and they were just being kids interrupting me. So long story short, I really had to create and protect that time for myself to grow my business. And so anyway, yeah, about a year ago, I had this conversation with Jake, a bit like, you don't support me. And he was like, well, what do you mean exactly? Bless him. Thank you, Jake. Instead of just getting defensive. And I was like, well, I want to work like here and there and whatever. He's like, I'm not stopping you, go. And I was like, oh gosh, like you're so right. Like it's actually me that's stopping myself. I would, and you might relate with this as well, I would be like, oh, Monday mornings are for me to work. And then, Jake and my daughter Thea would be going to have their daddy-daughter day. And I'd be like, oh, maybe I could just go and have a coffee with them as well, like, and go to the park. Like, oh, I don't really have that much work to do. Or like, I would create these excuses for myself. And I think that's another beautiful piece there is like being true to your word. Because so often we can have these desires around what it is we want to create, around the prosperity that we want to cultivate, and it doesn't actually align with who we are being. If I am, constantly dropping my time for my work that I say that I want, like there's an incongruence, right? And so it was a huge piece for me to actually, create that time, like say in a really like non-defensive communication with my husband, like, hey, this is the time that I want. These are the days that I want. How can we make this happen? And then from there, actually protecting that time. Like I was responsible for that time. And in having that time, making use of that time. So for me, it was noticing like where I was flapping about, where I had that time, where I was like not actually choosing to be there. And this is what, like, it's not to say that, every Monday morning I have to do work. Like there'll be some days that I genuinely really just desire to do something else, whether it's spend time with my family or whatever. And so I really get clear on choosing my choice, I call it. How can you consciously choose your choice? Right. And that's even like with things like, that feel uncomfortable or don't feel so pleasurable. This is how we make it a little bit more pleasure-led as well. Things like, I don't know, washing the dishes. Sometimes it can be like, oh God, I have to wash the dishes. And it feels like, or like, oh God, I have to work. Or, oh God, I've got to spend time with my kids. They want me to play these pretend games with them. And actually, I can either choose, like, hang on a second, I have the ability to consciously choose how I'm using my time and my energy right now. What is my choice? And when I could consciously choose what it was that I desired, that gave me such freedom, because it didn't feel like I was stuck between a rock and a hard place. It didn't feel like, oh, I have to do X, Y, and Z, you know? So in creating and protecting and utilizing my time, that has shifted so much. And it's not just because of the work that I'm doing in that time. It's because of who I am being. It's because of the evolution of my sense of worthiness for that time, particularly when, a year or so, I wasn't particularly making all that much money in my business. So it was like, oh, should I be spending time away from my family to build this business that's actually not bringing in a whole lot of financial resources right now? How can I believe in myself so much that I'm committing to this and devoting to this, even when there is not any actual kind of external evidence that it's working right now? And so in building on that, creating, protecting, and utilizing my time, in having those kind of conversations, I was able to really start to deepen my belief into my desires, into what it was I wanted to create, in who I wanted to be, in the prosperity I wanted to cultivate. And in also too, it helped me to call forth my sense of worthiness and worthiness in my business as well. So let me see if there's anything here I want to share on that note. Share with me below. Do you feel in the chat box, share with me, what is resonating for you? Are you feeling as though, yeah, okay, you're noticing where you might be in incongruence with what it is that you're wanting to create and yet the person you are being? Do you feel like there is a bit of a challenge for you in having conversations perhaps with your partner to have time and space for yourself to create what you want to create? Yeah, do you feel like this level of worthiness and self-belief is the thing that's actually holding you back from creating what it is you desire? I would love to hear from you in the chat box. And this is why, at the start of this, I was like, it's not just one thing. There is it's an evolution, it's a stacking. And I think also too, when I started to let go of the idea of oh, when I just do this one thing, or when I just I know for some people, not so much for me, but I know there's this idea of when I go viral, or when I have 1,000 followers or 10,000 or whatever, then, and it's not actually the case, because you know what happens? Particularly with the example of money, I had a really huge month recently, a 15K month. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, when I reach that level of money, oh, then I'll know exactly the way forward. Then I'll, really have achieved a certain thing, or then I will be more confident. If I waited until I had created that kind of financial success in my business to be worthy or to believe in myself, I probably wouldn't have gotten there so quickly. Whereas by doing it the other way around, that's how we create, we don't wait for the thing, because you get the thing, right? And you're still the same you. Yeah. All right. So, Erin, believing in myself and my abilities, self-worth, that I can achieve this. Yeah. Yeah. Sasha, all of this, getting the balance with my husband, getting the balance around the kids. What is sleep? Right. Yeah. And acknowledging that sometimes the season is just what it is. And I shared some stories recently, last night on Instagram, about how last week for me was 7 days of Jake working. I had the kids, all of my work time went out the window, and any other kind of time I got to spend with my clients. But time outside of that, I was tired, I was napping, and I was going to bed early for the second half, because I learned halfway through that week, I need to get myself to bed early. Jess, I'm still at the do I actually have anything of worth to offer stage. Very supportive husband, thankfully. Kids are now 6 and 4. So feeling like I have no excuses. Huh? Yeah. Do I actually have anything of worth to offer? Yeah, that can be a tricky one. Not tricky, that can be like an uncomfortable one, right? Erin, I don't feel like I have an excuse either, Jess. I don't even have kids yet. Know that feeling of what do I have to offer, right? Yeah. And therein comes the level of trust. The level of trust that what you have to offer is enough. The level of trust that, like me this week, the time that I have is enough. The things that I'm actually doing in that time is enough. Like knowing that right now it's enough. And again, chances are there's probably this element of what I sort of spoke to just now with this idea that, oh, at some point I'm going to know that what I have to offer is enough. And when I get there, then it will be easy. And it's kind of like we have to reverse engineer it. We have to decide now that what we have to offer now is enough. And then through that, that's when we start to create momentum. We create actions. We look at the thoughts that we're believing, because the thoughts that we think create the way we feel. If we are thinking like, what I have to offer is not enough, well, then the flow on of that is feeling like pretty shit about yourself. You're not going to have much of a mojo, as I would say. You're not going to be very motivated to find out what it is that you have to offer, or if anyone wants what you have to offer, right? So it comes from here. We go first. This is why being pleasure-led, like tuning in with yourself, what it is that you desire. Yeah, knowing what it is you desire, owning what it is you desire, claiming that. And so maybe just for now, it was Erin and Jess, I believe. Yeah, maybe just for now, it's like, well, what I have to offer is enough. Like reminding ourselves of those thoughts. All right, cool. And I'm going to invite you on Wednesday as well. We're going to have a whole like 45 minutes, hour of coaching on Wednesday. So if you want me to take you through my processes, like I said, this is kind of be the what. We'll do some of the how on Wednesday. Then you are most welcome to join. I highly recommend. And I will just notice too, just quickly, like saying like, I have no excuses. Like that makes me feel like shit. If I say to myself, oh, I have no excuse, I should be doing this, or I should have achieved that, or, it's kind of another version of like, well, what's wrong with me? And we don't create beautiful things. We don't honor what it is that we're here to actually create from that place of like, what's wrong with me, or I'm not good enough, or I don't have enough, or, so thank you for sharing that with me. I totally resonate. I've been there too. Yeah, and it can be really simple with the actual process of what we do. All right, so that's one little piece of the pie. Now I'm going to have a quick drink. If you guys need to jump in with any questions along the way, as I said, you're most welcome. All right, let me see what else, because I've written a few little things here of what to share, and I'm going to see which one to dive into next. Okay, well, I think this one is a really beautiful segue with what you guys shared around like trust. One of the things I really, really, really tuned in with over the last sort of this year, is actually like having awareness of my energy and my capacity and trusting myself. So if you've been through an experience before where maybe you've had burnout, or like me, you've had some kind of mental health challenges. So after I had my first, I ended up with postnatal depression and anxiety and insomnia. 2 years later, I had my babe, decided to launch my business. 2 years later, I had another babe, decided to write my book, still, growing my business at this point in time. But yeah, only up to probably like this year, I was almost like on this, I felt quite wobbly. It was kind of like the step between going from, the jetty to being like on a boat, like that kind of wobble, right? Because I had this fear of, I don't know if you'd call it like relapsing, but like I had this fear of, experiencing depression, anxiety, insomnia. So having that kind of an experience again, like, oh, I don't want to do too much. I don't want to take on too much, for fear of going down that path again. And then I realized, like, I have, from that experience, I have so much more awareness now around my energy, around my like capacity in general. And also I know myself so much better now. Like, in actual fact, I'm really thankful for that experience because it had shifted my entire world. I don't think I would have written the book. I don't think I'd be doing this work. Yeah, I don't think that I would have this level of awareness of self that I do now. And so in having that level of awareness, I also then didn't have to, but chose to begin to really trust myself and trust what my business was calling me into, and know that there is actually an opportunity where I can pull back if I need to, or I can, like, so the last time I was going to run my free experience of the mother load, for those of you who joined me in that, I think that was in July. I ended up having like a really bad flu. And so I postponed it a week. Now, if I had done that probably a year ago, there would have been so much mind drama around like, oh, I can't cope, or like, I shouldn't be doing this now. Or, and again, something I shared in my stories last night, it's kind of this idea of like, if I had this idea in my head of like, okay, so maybe I wait until all the kids are at school. Maybe I'll change my mind before they even all go to school, or will homeschool. Like, who knows? Maybe I need to wait until, Jake is on a regular, like a normal Monday to Friday time schedule. Maybe I have to wait until like we're all really healthy. Little kids get sick all the time. It's like, oh my gosh, when does that end? And instead of like assuming that this needs to be a perfect environment and circumstances all need to fit perfectly before I can grow and before I can do what I want to do and achieve what I want to achieve, instead of waiting for that, how can I actually be with where I'm at now? Be with like the way my life is right now. How can I respond to life in a way that still keeps me aligned with where I want to go and what I want to create and have and experience and achieve? Yeah. And so, for example, my experience of this week, like having a super full week and being like, oh my gosh, that wasn't ideal, because now I've got, pleasure driven prosperity. I should have been speaking about it more last week. And then I was like, well, hang on a second. No, I think that it's perfect. Like, this can be enough. This can be enough in trusting myself, in trusting that what I did with my energy and my time last week, it was fine. It was perfect. It was enough, um, and trusting that, when I have 7 days straight of looking after all 3 of my kids and like using any kind of spare time I have for like work, and like trusting that I know when to pull back. I think it was maybe Wednesday, I took a nap. I had planned to do something Wednesday lunchtime, like nap time when I could. And I took a nap instead. It's like, okay, can I trust myself? And then can I trust myself to take the nap? Like, oh, am I still going to like share the things I want to share? So trusting ourselves is like a huge part of it. And I think you'll probably find that, this idea of when I've reached that point of pleasure driven prosperity, or even that point of achieving what I want to achieve, we have this idea of like, okay, then it all falls into place. But this, as I'm sharing, I suppose today, is like this theme of like, no, it is who we are becoming along the way. So yeah, having an awareness of like my energy, my all-round capacity, and learning to trust myself and leading from there has been an absolutely huge, like, pivotal experience this year. And then that also goes with trusting myself on when to pull back, trusting myself on when to say no. There were a couple of things that I was invited to do this year, and part of me was like, oh, you should say yes. Like, you have the capacity to do that, this could be good for X, Y, and Z. And then just like actually tuning in with what I desired and asking myself as I do, like, it would be out of integrity for me to not ask this question all the time, but asking myself, like, is this going to bring me pleasure? Is this pleasurable for me? Does this feel pleasurable for me? And for those couple of things, it was like, no, I don't desire it. And it doesn't feel so pleasurable. So just trusting that no is what's required, and it's okay, and I see so much of this with setting boundaries as well. Like, we know where our boundaries lie because our body tells us. So having this deep connection with my body to know where my energy is at, you know, what my capacity is, what feels like obligation, honoring what it is that I desire. Again, if it's not to do the things that I was invited to do, like saying no to those. And that goes for setting boundaries as well. We can't create the kind of prosperity we desire if we are not willing to set boundaries that align with us. Yeah. And so if you're like, oh gosh, I need to set some more boundaries, or like, oh, I want to get better at boundaries. The first thing I would invite you to do is like, in question, like ask yourself, like, how can I foster a deeper relationship with my body? Yeah. Like, and I feel like my pregnancies and my births have been a really pivotal opportunity for that. And so for those of you who aren't having any more kids, or you know, haven't had that experience yet, don't think that, oh no, you can't foster that deeper relationship. But that's just for me. Like I really noticed how pregnancy really tunes you into your body. You know, your senses are so heightened. You know, your smell is heightened, your taste is heightened, your touch is heightened. So it's like, I actually cannot not have this relationship with my body now. Like, it's speaking to me so loudly. And, you know, how can I continue cultivating this? And there's a few of those practices in my book. For those of you who've already read it, you'll know which ones I'm talking about. It's probably mostly all of them, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. But tuning back in with boundaries, when it comes to boundaries, it's like our body knows where our boundaries lie. You know, I think we try and do so much from the neck up because it's so glorified and celebrated in our society to, you know, operate from the mind. It's very masculine, operate from this masculine archetype, this masculine energy, where everything is so like logical and rational, and you know, it's all about like using your mind, as opposed to like getting below the neck and like tuning in with your body, you know, tuning in with your intuition. And I think probably this, you know, conversation around trust was allowing myself to follow my intuition and to honor my desires and to let my body speak to me. And so, yeah, if boundaries is something that you want to dive into a little bit more, I invite you to work out how it is that you can have that deeper relationship with your body. If it is something that you really want to work on, jump in with me with mentoring, because, and again, I'm going to share more of this at the end of this conversation. There is so much I can share with you and invite you into and support and guide you through. Like, we don't have to do everything on our own, you know? Again, I think that's another piece of that's celebrated in our society, like doing it all by yourself. It's like, why? I can, but do I need to? Same as motherhood. I can, but like, I'm going to end up like a bitch. That's why I said to my husband, I can keep the house clean and I can be the, you know, wholesome mom, but I'm going to be a bitch. And I'm probably going to be snappy with my kids, and I'm, you know, not going to be enjoying life. So tuning in with our body, it has got like, our body is like the portal for pleasure, right? And I shared in my book, like, if you have a body and my book, be prepared for more pleasure. Sasha, yeah, the richest, most successful people have help. I know, right? And I was talking with someone about this today. We were kind of thinking, like, imagine being like someone, like an athlete, someone who's like desiring to like get to the Olympics, and you're like at this highest level. Imagine being like, no, I don't need a coach. I can run on my own. Like, well, of course you can. But, you know, having that support, that makes such a huge difference. Okay, what else? Any other comments here? Sasha, I remember struggling to know what to do. What did I love and what did I desire? And how could I pull it all together? Working with a coach and astrology helped me to find that. Find boundaries. Yeah. Richest, most successful people have help. Yes, they do, my love. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. So we've talked about how we can really create, protect, and like honor what it is that we desire, in particular, the time that we want and the spaciousness to get us to where we want to go. We've talked about worthiness and believing in ourselves. Yeah, we've really talked about like trust and knowing yourself, knowing your desires, and really honoring that. We've spoken to our connection with our body. We've spoken to having support in doing so. What else do I want to share with you? Because I don't think I'm going to get through all these pieces today, but there'll definitely be able to be some threaded in tomorrow. I think a huge thing for me this year has also been in having the ongoing connection with what it is that I desire. So, for example, wanting to grow my business more, increase my sales, like increase my finances, increase my financial wealth, increase that like kind of degree of prosperity. That was something I really wanted to do. So in order to do that, I maintained my connection. And I see so much through the lens of relationship. I believe that my business is like a whole nother entity that I'm in relationship with. And so, of course, if I'm in relationship with someone and I'm like trying to get them to like dance, monkey dance, like dance for me, like you're not doing what I want you to do, and being annoyed with them because they're not coming through with, what I want them to do. Like putting them down, saying things like, and I hear it so much, especially with women, like, oh, my little business. Like, imagine if you had like that heterosexual relationship and you're with your partner and you start calling him like, oh, my little boyfriend, like that's kind of not going to play out so well, right? And so it's the same with my business, seeing it as a relationship. Like, how can I maintain this beautiful connection with my business? How can we be in this relationship and really support each other and honor each other and work together to create what it is that we desire? And in the opening call, I shared like you are the perfect vehicle for your desires. The reason why you have your desires and they're not the same as everyone else's is because you are the perfect vehicle for that. And I believe like my business, for example, has come to me because I'm the perfect vehicle for it, you know? So creating that connection and like regularly honoring that connection. So if I was in relationship with my business and, or imagine being in a relationship with someone else, maybe it's a new relationship, like a new business. And this probably will translate to like just relationship in general, if you're considering prosperity from a relationship angle. Imagine if you started seeing someone and they like, you were just getting booty called, right? You'd hear from them like maybe once at midnight on a Saturday night. You'd kind of be a bit like, excuse me, no, thank you. Like, this is not how you build a good relationship, right? Like, we honor each other and we have these little connections. So maybe that would just look like in relationship, like, oh, that's nice. They messaged me like, how was your day? Maybe it's not about like having a date night every night, but maintaining that connection. And so for me, maintaining that connection with pleasure-driven prosperity this year has been maintaining connection with my business, maintaining connection in my relationship with my husband, with my kids, and then with like my health. So I've been out surfing, I've gotten back into the gym, I started back running again, but I feel like I'm getting so old, my knees are not too impressed with that, which is a shame because it creates such big impact for a quick 30-minute run. Okay, and so what that actually like practically looked like, and I'll use the analogy of the garden. Like, imagine having a garden and you can only go out there once a week, and you would only go out there once a week. And by then there's kind of like weeds everywhere. There's like caterpillars that have been eating like at your cabbages and cauliflowers. Like, you need to plant some more things and you haven't watered it. It hasn't been raining. So like there's some little seedlings that have died. It's kind of like, okay, this feels really fucking overwhelming. It's a bit of a shit show right now. That's a bit discombobulating, right? And so if we can just really tend to that garden, tend to your relationships, tend to whatever it is that feels like the vehicles to the prosperity that you desire, if we can tend to those things like regularly, like frequently and little is perfect. I spoke earlier about like the micro building to create the macro. And it's exactly the same here. Like, imagine that garden, like just popping out, having a little look around, and you're like, oh, okay, today I'm noticing that there's heaps of cabbage moths around. I need to put like a little netty thing over there. So the next day you're out there, you put a net thing on, and then you're like, oh, the tomatoes are ripe enough today. I'll harvest them today so they don't get eaten. And then the next day you have a little look around, you're like, oh, I can notice those little weeds coming up. I'll pull them now. And the next day, like the next day you're noticing like, oh, those seedlings, they look a bit sad. It hasn't been raining. I'll make sure I water the garden today. Like, do you see how doing a little bit frequently. It doesn't require a lot of you, but it creates such a shift. Like those little kind of moments in the garden means we have a healthy, thriving garden, in comparison to trying to spend all of that time as one big chunk once a week, and it's not going so well because the seedlings have died, everything's been eaten by caterpillars, the tomatoes have been eaten, fill in the blank. I hope you like my analogies. They usually end up being about like nature or a garden or surfing or something. But yeah, that's what I've done with my business. Like I just decided, okay, little and often is absolutely fine. It's actually perfect. And I decided that was actually going to create more of a greater shift for me, create greater synergy than say just spending like a big chunk of time once a week. And so I've gotten really good at utilizing really small pockets of time and getting like really focused. Again, it's like about increasing your capacity. The more you do it, the easier it is. I'm so able now to switch from like mum life, sit down in my coaching chair and I'm on, And so, yeah, that's what it kind of looked like. And I shared with a bit earlier, like, so that looks like a couple of hours Monday morning, a couple of hours Tuesday afternoon. If my mum can have my daughter Wednesday morning, 3 hours there if I'm lucky. And then sometimes on a Saturday if Jake's not working. And so, yeah, so that's how I've been tending. I've been tending like little by little, like maintaining that relationship, growing our relationship. And it's the same in connection with my kids. I really, really have been valuing like one-on-one dates with my kids. Like and even they'll ask for them sometimes. I'll be like, oh shit, it's been a few weeks. Yeah, let's do that. But that doesn't mean that like, oh, I can only, foster that relationship with them and tend to that relationship like when it's one-on-one a few hours on a date night. Like yesterday we were at the beach and I had all 3 kids on my own, and of course I'm with the 2-year-old most of the time. The 7-year-old's out the back surfing, giving me a heart attack. The 5-year-old's trying to be out there with his 7-year-old brother, like scaring me. And so yeah, there was a point before we left and I had to say to like my daughter, who's my youngest, you need to now sit with Zeke. Okay. Here's snacks. Here's, things you can play with. I'm going to go spend some time with Oscar, like my 5-year-old, because we hadn't spent any time together that morning. And she was fine with it. We had a really great swim for a good 10 minutes or so. And it's like these little sprinklings of connection and fostering relationship that has like really created such big impact. And that goes in relationship as well. And I know for many of you who have little people, it's like really intense when you have small people because you're managing these little people who are dependent on you and you're not sleeping very much, as Sasha talked about before. And yeah, but what is also really helpful, and that I've actually shared with other people as well, because I do work with people in terms of relationship and desire and cultivating desire and intimacy. It's like, we have a daily pash, not like a nana kiss, but like a daily pash. And if that's all there is for connection for us for the day, like tick, we're done, it doesn't have to be date nights. It doesn't have to be like a monthly, I don't know, fill in the blank, what we're supposed to do, right? We don't have a lot of like babysitting support on the Wednesday morning. My mum has my daughter. That's about it. She's not interested in doing night times with the kids, which is fine. So yeah, for us, it looks like paying for a babysitter and then paying to go out. It ends up being a pretty costly expedition, right? And so then sometimes we would do, okay, so Tuesday nights we get the kids to bed, and if we want, we'll watch a movie together, or we'll play or we'll just chat or have a conversation, maybe talk about a podcast or something like that. Like noticing we can have these little sprinklings as we go. How's that resonating for everyone? Are you sort of thinking like, oh gosh, that sounds like a lot? Or is it like, oh, that sounds kind of doable? Let me know your thoughts, or if you have any questions. Sasha said, this is similar. Just aspirational. Thank you, my love. Sasha said, this is similar to the downloads I was getting last night. It's not enough to use our womb-given power to just birth something into existence. We also have to nurture it. Oh, I love that reflection. That's beautiful. The kids are back. Got to go. Okay, no worries. Yeah. Okay, and I'll see if there's anything else I want to really touch on there. I'm going to speak to you tomorrow about the big quits and the little quits. and we're going to be talking about feeling our feelings and cultivating more of that feminine energy. Before we go now, let me know. I'm happy to do a little bit of a Q&A, and then I'm going to touch on what my offers are for those of you in pleasure-driven prosperity, because I'm not sharing one of them publicly. They're going to be shared in here, and then I'd say they'll probably be filled. So, my loves, do you have any questions? Erin, Jess, did you want to ask anything, my loves? Jess is a no, Erin's a no. Okay, cool. All right. So, well, if you would like, you keep tuning in. I'm going to be sharing with you what's going to be happening from here on out in terms of what I'm offering to share. So, straight away, I want to dive in and share with you, like, okay, so these are the little features and these are the pieces. But I think what I need to share more of is actually what it is we are going to be doing together. So it's one-on-one mentoring, right? And it is about creating your pleasure-driven prosperity. And it is about looking at all of the pieces, all of the degrees, all of the angles of which you want to create prosperity. I'm going to share with you, as I've been saying, like this week is a lot of the what, like a lot of the what that I've done, and mentoring together is the how. So this is like my processes. These are the ways I would do it. This is the actions I would take. And the how also incorporates, as I'm sharing about tomorrow, like the failing with pleasure, because naturally problems will arise. Like, again, as I was talking, it's like, once I hit this point, then I'll have no problems. And it's like, no, when you get to that point, you've just got different problems. And so I've started to learn along the way, in particular this year, because I've had such big growth this year, like professionally, personally, in my business and all of the things. There are problems that naturally arise every step that you go at every level. And so if you feel like there is something that you definitely know you want to achieve or experience or have, or the person that you want to be, you want to shift that, I'm going to invite you into one-on-one mentoring with me. And as I said, there's 2 different options. And so that maybe you can stop perhaps going around in circles, so that you can create a whole new like framework of how to actually create what you desire, so that you can actually work out how to know, own, and claim or embrace what it is that you desire, and do it in a way that is pleasurable. Because I don't doubt that you could do it on your own, not at all. But again, like, you don't have to. And chances are it'll be so much more pleasurable. I know so. It will be so much more pleasurable and easier and lighter and happen faster when you've got someone to hold that space for you and to guide you and provide you with a lot of the how, rather than trying to work it out yourself. So everything that I have discovered has been through both DIYing myself, like uncovering things on my own. That was a lot of reading and listening to podcasts and doing therapy and group therapy, and also having the support of like coaches and mentors. So everything that I've learned over the last few years, it's already here and I have to share with you. So there are 2 spots left for my standard one-on-one coaching. Now, I've just decided that both of these offerings are called Let's Fucking Go. One is like Let's Fucking Go, like right now, weekly mentoring and Voxer, and I'll sort of break that down a little bit more. And the other one's Let's Fucking Go. I've got a lot on my plate and I can't meet weekly, but this is how we're going to do it. So maybe that one's Let's Fucking Go Light. I don't know, but they're both of such value. So the first one is what I'm offering. I've got 2 spots left. Once those 2 spots are taken, I have a wait list until April, which is we have weekly one-on-one calls together, which is 50 minutes each. And that can be usually on the phone, so that you can like lay in the sun, or you can have a bath, or lay in bed, or do whatever you please. Zoom is also available too, if you want to jump on Zoom. So we have a weekly 50-minute session, and we also have unlimited Voxer. So if you're not in Voxer already for this week, like, get in and play. So that means you get coaching with me 5 days a week. It's open 24/7, which means you can jump in the entire time over 6 months. When you are thinking about something, or you get an idea, or you want to like share something and you want a really great soundboard, when you want to process feelings or thoughts, and when you want support and guidance, like, you jump in anytime. It can be midnight, whatever. And then I jump in 5 days a week, Monday to Friday at this point in time. And it's once a day at least, sometimes more if sometimes we can be coaching backwards and forwards. And what that means is like you shift and change and grow and achieve at hyper speed because you're getting coaching every single day. So that's that one. So weekly one-on-ones, ongoing Voxer, and that's 5K for 6 months. And now for those of you, so if you're already like, yes, that's me, I want you to send me a message when we get off this call and we can either get started right now. And there's bonuses for both options. We can get started right now. And what was the other piece I wanted to speak to? I'm not really sure. I lost my thought there. The second one, the second option is monthly one-on-one. So we're not meeting weekly. So I've just created this package recently. So my most recent client, this is what she's doing because she's also working a job and growing her business and doing the mum gig as well. Like there is lots of things happening. And so we are meeting once a month for one-on-ones and ongoing Voxer. So you have like that coaching option 5 days a week in Voxer for 6 months. And that one is 3,300, so $3,300. Now, you might like to get going right now. If you do with either of those, you're also going to be invited into my December. It's a project Pleasurepreneur for 2024. It's all of my private clients. We're getting together for a couple of hours in December, and we're going to be looking at some of the things that I am doing behind the scenes, what I'm focusing on next year. And we're going to be looking at some planning for you as well, like what it is you want to create. So that's in December. If you want to get started right now, you are going to have 3 weeks of Voxer added onto the end of your contract, the end of your time with me, the end of your mentorship. If you're like, yes, I want to get started, but I want to start in the new year, for those of you who sign up before December 1, then you get to have the whole of December as 3 weeks of Voxer. That's free, completely free. That's your bonus. And then we get started mid-January after Christmas. So there are your 2 options. Now, Erin and Jess, you're here with me. Do you want to share? Do you have any questions or anything you want to explore that I can answer? Because chances are if you have those questions, other people will too. Erin, did you have any questions, my love? No, definitely. Yeah. Jess, did you have any questions?
Sorry, I'm having audio issues. No, not at the moment. I'm all good.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. And I'm also going to be offering on Wednesday for the Q&A call because there is often those people who know that they want to work with me. They know they want the mentoring, but they're having a hard time like giving it to themselves. And so we'll explore on Wednesday. If there's anyone in the group who also feels the same and you want to like kind of explore what's stopping you, we can do that on Wednesday as well. It's not my job to like have anyone sign up. It's my job to have you reach that knowing, whether it's a yes or a no. It's kind of like knowing, owning, and claiming what you desire. And if it's not mentoring, I want to know that it's a no, you know, that's my job. And I love my job. I love being a coach and helping people find clarity. So as I'm talking throughout the next couple of days, when I'm mentioning like the one-on-one mentoring and the 2 different options, that is what it's about. All right. Well, checking on the time, we are done time-wise. Now, as I said, tomorrow it's all about failing with pleasure, all of the problems that can arise and what we can do. Erin, you're most welcome, my love. And Wednesday, it will be coaching. So if you've got some kind of experience that's happening at the moment, if you know of what kind of prosperity you would like to create and it doesn't feel so pleasurable and you want some help with that, like come on Wednesday, bring your questions, let's meet live and you can have some hot seat coaching. Okay, now those of you, just to be clear for the replay as well, for those of you who are ready to go with mentoring, send me a message. There is also the option to have a consult call. Again, it might be like so that you can get clear on where it is that you want to go with this. We can do consult calls, but yeah, I think that's it for now. You get your bonuses, 3 weeks of Voxer, whether you sign up for beginning this year or next year, and you'll also get to meet for our December planning for 2024. It's very exciting. All right, my loves, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining me. And I hope you guys can come tomorrow. And for those of you watching the replay, make sure you let me know in the Voxer group. If you're not already in there, get in there. Let me know if you have any questions or what's landing for you. All right. Erin, you can come tomorrow, but not Wednesday, no worries. And if you can't come Wednesday and you know you've got something that you want to like get coached on, you're most welcome to provide that with me like ahead of time, and I'll speak to it on the call as well. Because I know that it's always so helpful when when you have questions, usually other people have those questions too, you know, and it's like, oh, I didn't know I wanted to ask that, but that's a great question. All right, my loves, I'll leave you with it. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.
You too. Bye.